Okay, so I finally got a chance to give Talisman a good thrashing, and now it's going to be time to do a rigging adjustment for our new head stay. Anytime that you do new standing rigging on a boat, you're gonna find that it stretches a little bit, and it's going to require some adjustment after the fact. So we originally started with this mast pretty straight, and with an in-mast furling system, you want the mast to be fairly straight. The more bend you induce into the mast, and you do that with backstay tensioning, the more likely it's going to be that the sail's going to have issues deploying, because you're trying to deploy the foil itself inside the mast has actually got a bend in it, and that's hard to unroll. The straighter the foil is, and the straighter the mast is, the easier the sail's gonna come out of the luff slot, as they call it. So let's talk a little bit about how these rigs are set up. You can, in this case, we've now got some bend in the mast, and that has occurred since we went sailing and sailed the boat pretty hard, and in my opinion, for sure, stretched the headstay. They predicted that it would stretch probably 1/4 to 3/8 of an inch at least, and I would say that seems about right. And so the question becomes, what's the deal with inducing bend into a mast? And the answer there is, on race boats with slab reefing systems, where you've got cars that go up a slot or a track in the mast, you can bend the mast and flatten the sail. And that happens because the center of the sail gets pulled forward, and the tack and the head of the sail are pulled backward, and the draft gets reduced out of the sail. And that's handy for going upwind. If you're trying to get the absolute maximum performance out of a boat, you can do that. In an in-mast furling system like we don't have horizontal battens. It's not a high performance sail, as you would see in the racing world. Although it's a high quality sail, very burly, laminated Dyneema sail, it is not we're never gonna, and it's only about 33% of our total sail area. Our main sail on this boat is actually not that large. Most of the driving power comes from the Genoa. So we don't have a whole lot of need for bend in the mast. Secondly, bending a mast, inducing bend into a mast that's got in-mast furling is gonna really make it a little bit more difficult to get the sail in and out, because imagine like a window shade with a bent axle or bent shaft for it, and you're trying to turn this thing. It's not going to want to turn because it's curved inside, and so we don't want that. So I'm going to try to reduce that, and that's going to mean that I'm going to need to tighten up the turnbuckles on the headstay, and I am going to remove this plate. I don't need to remove them both. These plates hold the furling drum in position so that it can raise and lower. If I took both of them off, the whole thing would want to drop down. It's very heavy, especially with a sail on it, so we don't want to do that. What I want to do is take off this nut and these two cap screws, hex drive cap screws, remove the cotter pins out of the turnbuckle, and then we'll release the tension on the backstay. There's no need to really, I could do it in place if I didn't have a hydraulic backstay, but it'll be a lot harder on the threads in the turnbuckle. I can probably almost turn it by hand if I remove enough. I mean, not really, but it will be quite easy to turn if I remove the tension from the backstay. So when I put this seizing wire in here to make sure that this shackle couldn't come apart, I left a little loose, because one of the things that tends to happen with these is that if the wire gets caught between the shackle and the body, it'll pinch the wire and break it off. But now I'm noticing that they've actually done it nicely that they've actually recessed an area back there so that this stays loose. And I could probably tighten this up if I wanted to. It will not come loose like this. There's no way it'll be able to turn with that wire around it no matter what happens. So I'll probably just leave it go for the moment. I love the design of this backstay tensioner, and it's absolutely saved my butt in terms of this the rigging issues that we've had, because it has these lock nuts and studs that allow you to manually lock the backstay adjuster if you have a failure of the hydraulic cylinder, and that's pretty much what we have. This area, the plating has come off, and we continually get rust, and it's a defect from the manufacturing, but there's a part of me that wants to just have this thing rebuilt if at all possible. Really looking to see if that's something that can be done. I've been talking to some hydraulics people in Baltimore about it, and they say that it can be. I don't know about price yet. Anyway, so the way this works is I back off the valve, and there it goes. And that's about as far as it wants to go. So tighten the valve back up, and now we are officially loose, or looser. These are insulators for our single sideband radio, so that section of cabling up there is insulated. Okay, so here I'm putting a little Tef gel on the threads. I already have Tef gel on these threads from before, but I'm gonna add a bit more. I really don't want this threads to gall. Galling of stainless steel threads is something that's a real problem that you have to avoid. Stainless steel is not as hard as standard tool steel or regular steel, and it if you're not careful, the threads will kind of break off and start twisting inside the body of the turnbuckle, and they call that galling. And once it happens, it locks up and there's no turning it, and you really don't want that. And the solution is to make sure it's lubricated properly. With a few back and forth adjustments to this, I've got the mast straight and fully tensioned, and now I've got to put this this bolt back together. The reason I had to do that was because I couldn't get up to the flat up on that the lower terminal to keep the cable itself from spinning when I made the adjustment. So I had to use the halyard to lift the entire foil, sail, the whole bit in order to expose that. And now that that's done, I'm going to be putting it all back together. So just use my big ginormous socket wrench. I'm using a socket wrench for this because I don't want to scratch the plates any more than I have to. And get these back on, and then I'll put the cotter pins in before I put the second plate on. New cotter pins, everything's all bolted back together, and now it's a matter of retensioning the backstay one more time. Marked my position with this black electrical tape around the ram. I also have some around down here as well in case something happens and this falls off, which it's been threatening to do because it's covered in oil. Okay, so there we are. Whoops. We'll run the nuts up, locking nuts, and then take off the tension of the ram. Since it does leak, it's got to leak hydraulic fluid out. I don't want that to happen because if it runs out of fluid, it'll stop working entirely, at least as far as the pumping part goes. There's one. There's the other. Nice and snug, and then take that off. I think we're good to go. Little tiny bit of a bend. That's good. So here we have the situation of the generator battery is not holding a charge, and that is not a good thing. Not only that, but our engine start battery is at a little bit above 12, but not really at the 14, maybe 13 and a half that we'd like to see. Our domestic house battery bank's at 24, which is good. We normally be at 28 and a half or so when we start with a full charge, but everything's been on overnight, and so we're looking at 24.36 volts, which is fine. I really try to avoid going below the rated voltage of these batteries. I try to stay above 24 volts. If I get below about 23, things like refrigeration compressors will start automatically shutting down, and we don't want that. It's also not good for them to run at less than their rated voltage for motors. 5 going on 6 years. They're actually over 6 years old at this point, and so that was a lot to get out of a lead acid battery, which is what these are. I'm fond of saying that if you're in this life, you're going to be a diesel mechanic and an electrician. It's not that hard, but that's the stuff that you're diagnosing all the time is electrical issues and staying on top of whether your electrical system is working properly. Right now, I've called around and found the batteries that we have in this boat are a size H3, which are just like, I think they made like, there's none of those around anywhere. They're totally uncommon size. However, a Group 27 from the US that's pretty close. So that's what we're after. So Oyster has this convenient feature where you can basically tie the two batteries together by getting, well, the strings are a little tight. So by going in like so, the key, and then flipping it downward, it'll tie the two batteries together. And that's what I've used in order to get the genset started, basically using the engine battery. I've started the main engine in order to make sure that I don't accidentally somehow run the battery for the main engine down and then not be able to start either. Just to be on the safe side. The alternator for the engine will continue to recharge the engine battery should there be a problem. So this is what isolators look like, and you turn them like so, and that isolates the circuit and shuts it off, so that it pretty much makes it impossible to short circuit anything on that particular circuit. We started by isolating the batteries, both the genset and the genset start battery, as well as the engine start battery, because we have 24 volt systems around that we don't want to accidentally have crossover somehow or short out, and then secondly, we just don't want any kind of surges or anything going back into the system. We did take photographs. I took photographs of this with my phone so that I can guarantee that I put it all back together the way it's supposed to go. Well, so get the two batteries that we're replacing out. Wendy's cleaning the wires, which for some reason have some sort of nasty gunk on them that I can't quite figure out why they're this dirty. But they just are. So we're cleaning those with WD-40, and then later we'll probably degrease them with something else. Try to keep them from getting dirty again. So how do you get the batteries back to the Budget Marine? Just like this. Yeah. total pain to move batteries. No wonder they use so many 6-volt batteries for our house bank instead of a bunch of 12-volt ones. All right, well, here are the two new AC Delco engine and genset start batteries, and I'm in the process of putting this all together. I'm using dielectric grease on the posts because it didn't look like there was any there before. That's what this is here. It's basically what it helps with any type of acids forming on the posts. Keeps everything kind of working, lubed up. I'm trying to install these covers on top of the battery posts, although it's very difficult. None of these batteries are protected in terms of having covers, which is not good. I'm going to try to put ones on each of these here as the day goes on. I bought these a year or so ago, but never installed them. So I'm going to see what I can do with those, and we'll get her down here in a minute. We've got this all put back together. There's really only one thing left. Just realized I forgot to do, and that is to screw a block down so that the batteries can't move. I need to do that before I put this back and take some pictures from my records.